Good morning. It's 9:32 a.m. on June 9th, 2021. When I first tried to go to college in 1995, I left the day after I graduated high school. I'd already made arrangements. I actually left early and went out to Chicago, made arrangements to get a job and a place to stay over the summer with the hope of making a little bit of money and getting to know the area before I started college. I ended up staying in the International House at the University of Chicago. During the rest of the school year, the International House is available for foreign students, almost as a form of dormitory accommodation. During the summer, at least at the time, it was available for a form of rent to students that were not attending the school during the summer session who were on campus, regardless of whether they were registered for class or not. And so I stayed at the International House in the summer of 1995 prior to starting my college education. I had a room, and in the room there was a telephone. I don't recall using the telephone very much at all, to be honest with you. At some point, there was a period of time where you had to leave if you were part of that particular arrangement before moving into the dormitory for the school. And as I was closing down what had been set up as part of me being there, you have to open up an account with the International House, and you have to check in periodically. But as I'm checking out, so to speak, during that time frame, I'm given a phone bill. I'm told that I owe for a phone bill. And I made some calls, some local calls. I believe I'd called my parents or my family, which was in another state. I had made some long distance calls interstate. But these calls that were on my phone bill were not interstate. They were to countries in Central Africa. They were substantial. There were several $1,000s, if I recall, at least $2,000 worth of phone calls that were billed to me, or rather billed to the room I was in. Allegedly between that room and Central Africa. I had no reason to call Africa. I had no reason to make any international calls. I told him I never made these phone calls. I can't possibly pay the bill. Put in my notice that I was not going to pay the bill. I was 18. Nobody had ever told me what it meant to have somebody take your credit, especially the first line of credit you're actually opening on your life, assess you fake bills, including fake bills having to do with long distance phone calls to a conflict zone, and then not pay it, but also not provide you with an appropriate process to go through a dispute of those charges. I thought that by telling the people at the International House as I was checking out, I never made these phone calls, I'm not responsible for these charges, I thought that was enough. It wasn't. I did not know at the time that this was happening, that there was a process that was being addressed, that was being undertaken to provide what would soon be the confirmation process for a new Secretary of State. A Secretary of State that had considerable responsibilities associated with the Rwandan genocide. Many things happened that summer. Many things have happened since. I have had the good fortune in my life at various points of meeting people that are of African descent or that are African, actually from Africa, and even people from around that area, but also surrounding countries, and trying to get to know them and finding them to be very highly skilled people, and people of very fine character, people that I would have been very proud to have worked with. But something always happens. And what I've seen is that at some point they get replaced. They are no longer part of my life. They're no longer part of whatever the possibilities are moving forward. They get replaced by something that's not them. If you just focus on skin color, you may have one understanding of what's going on. But those phone calls that somebody billed to me before I even started college have been in my background ever since. I bring this up because on the 25th anniversary of what was actually this confirmation process of that particular Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, I was not aware that day it was the 25th anniversary, but I was in the course of doing other investigations I had been involved in, including in connection with genetically modified organisms, and my concern that the requirements that were being undertaken in certain parts of the world when it came to access to seed for people in agricultural communities that were experiencing either some economic hardship or displacement because of political unrest had more far reaching implications that were being revealed. And that concurrent to the alleged processes of genetically altering or genetically modifying food products was also a process of genetically altering seed connected to cultivation of illicit drugs, specifically opium, specifically genetically modified opium poppy plants that were, at least at the time that I found, genetically modified, presumably to be resistant to a specific kind of fungus that can impact or affect the poppy plant and can destroy crop yields. I was contemplating this that day. It formed a part of a consideration of what is an appropriate relationship diplomatically between the United States and other countries where production of narcotics is being used as leverage in order to try to alter political realities. But if you have a company that's literally producing genetically modified seeds associated with narcotics production, well, we get into a very significant situation, especially when that company has mergers and affiliations with pharmaceutical companies that are presumably contracted to provide a humanitarian service. Now, there have been several cases, not only in the United States, but in the northwestern hemisphere, about how a genetically modified organism in the form of a corn seed plant can impact yields of non-genetically modified corn for a specific period of time. People for whom corn production is very important had to deal with these concepts of ownership over seed. That if you're infiltrated or invaded by a genetically modified organism by virtue of the fact that it has a copyright or a patent protection, your crop yield can then become susceptible to a process whereby somebody else claims it because they infiltrated. They invaded. Or rather, the seed was distributed through no fault of their own, but it found its way into your field. And because it's proprietary information, now they're entitled to some of your yield. This has had a very serious and profound impact on people's considerations of what's possible. Are they genetically engineering people in parts of the world to be synthetically synergistic with those qualities that so many people find alluring about the poppy? Have they literally created a paradigm where women are being genetically engineered to be narcotics as a way to attempt to compel political concessions, including by those who otherwise would see narcotics production as anathema to their way of life? You see, this isn't about being accused anymore. of having access to a narcotic and making it available for illegal distribution through clandestine networks. We've literally already entered an age where the refusal to actually have any respect for our bodily sovereignty is so pervasive that I believe that right now what we're dealing with is people whose arrogance makes them think they're entitled to identify people that they think might have aesthetic characteristics they prefer and genetically alter them, including in ways that have them resonate with narcotics. I know how great that Putin Schumer hybrid was. It was great. It was amazing. But the thing with hybridization of a marijuana plant is it produces a particular potency. And when you consume it, well, it gets you high. You enjoy it. It elicits a particular kind of pleasure, but you build up a tolerance. So you have to keep cultivating new kinds of hybridization. You're not making that Schumer Putin blend anymore, are you? You haven't made that one for a long time. You're trying for more exotic combinations. How exotic do you plan to get? The Taliban is being reported as making very significant gains in what is at least publicly reported as a process of the withdrawal of the American military from Afghanistan. They're very potent right now. See, I've never done opium. I've never done heroin. I don't know if there's the same kind of tolerance that one cultivates when they consume and engage with that kind of narcotic. But I do know we have a problem with distribution and misrepresentation of who's actually providing the product line to begin with. I think today is a good day for me to acknowledge that specific moment in January. I stand by my strategy. If it needed some negotiation or if it needed other considerations in order to be most successful, I can accept that and I can be a reasonable person. But I can't possibly accept, even if he was gorgeous, even if he was that virile and dedicated, it would not be appropriate. Even after 25 years of resistance to a political paradigm that is completely anathema to my way of life, and even after being seduced at a period of time for entertainment of a political paradigm that would see the normalization or legalization of narcotics as somehow being viable or perhaps preferred to the alternatives that accompany eradication and the kind of spiritual refinement that comes with abstinence. I have lapsed in the past, but I will not again. It's very important that as these transitions are made, we don't allow ourselves to become distilled into the kind of spite we are resisting. I was a witness to an announcement that had very far-reaching implications concerning a merger that was allowed to move forward after it had been protested. The timing of the announcement of that merger and its authorization to move forward is still something that I reflect on very frequently now. It has itself been connected to other crimes that should have been stopped, both domestically and internationally. For the record, I do not believe that genetically modifying seed so that you have to repeatedly return to your drug dealer in order to eat is appropriate.